everybody. Happy Friday. It is Friday, May 18th, and as you know, Mrs. Love is not here today, but you will get your lesson recorded here. We are covering Unit 12, Lesson 5, which is chapters 59 and 60 in your book. You can do a quick check on yourself here by answering this question. Richard Nixon was the only president to ever resign from the presidency. If you want to pause and think about that, come on back and I'll give you the answer. All right, the answer to that question is true. He was the only president to ever resign. So here's what we're covering today. We're going to talk about Ronald Reagan, who is the next president who came after Jimmy Carter. We learned about Carter and Ford yesterday. We're going to talk about Reagan's domestic policies. We're going to talk about his strategy in dealing with the Soviet Union. We're going to talk about some of his successes and failures and some major events that happened while he was president. Don't forget, there's that study guide that I gave to you. It's also in your online school under Unit 12 in your course materials. You can grab that and be filling it out for our test, which will be next Thursday. So I want you to just pause for a minute. You can pause the recording after I'm done talking and give yourself a minute to remember what we learned about yesterday and see if you can identify both of these people. So go ahead and pause the recording, and when you're ready to find the answer, come on back. Okay, this is Gerald Ford, and yesterday we learned that he became president when Nixon resigned. He had been the vice president, so automatically he becomes the president. We also learned yesterday that he was never elected president. He was a one-term president. And some of the things that he was known for, we talked about yesterday. His presidency was not all that exciting. Then we learned about Jimmy Carter, who actually beat Gerald Ford in the election of 1976. He was also a one-term president. He was the guy that was from Georgia, and he was a farmer. People didn't really take him seriously, and he kind of got a bad rap because of a lot of negative things that were going on in the world at that time. So when he tries to get reelected, here's what happens. He loses to this guy, Ronald Reagan. Okay, in a minute in your Ed Puzzle, our little video clip link will pop up. Watch the 60-second president link about Ronald Reagan and then come on back. All right, so after the turmoil of the 1960s and 70s and the unsettled presidencies of Ford and Carter, many Americans thought Ronald Reagan was just right for the times. He called himself Mr. Normal, and he didn't seem to take himself too seriously. As for ready wit, hardly anyone could touch him. But he didn't joke when it came to ideas. He knew exactly what he believed, and he explained those beliefs clearly and simply. In a complex world that was harder and harder to understand, he seemed reassuring, honest, and old-fashioned. So Ronald Reagan is known as the great communicator. In fact, that's what people actually started to call him. He was in his 70s most of his presidential years. But although he was old enough to be a grandfather, few people really thought of him as being old. He had kind of a boyish face. He was easygoing and likable and friendly, and he had a great sense of humor. And he knew how to use television to his benefit like no other president had done before. And fun fact about Ronald Reagan, he was actually a movie actor before he got into politics. So when Reagan took over, the time period in which he ran the country became known as the Reagan Revolution. Many of his ideas had begun 50 years earlier when the New Deal, some of the New Deal programs were overturned. But by Reagan's time, many of these welfare programs that were initially designed to help poor and needy people kind of fizzled out and became bad programs. Many reasons why. People didn't really need them anymore, and also because some of them were just too complicated to deal with. So Reagan was against these kind of programs, which came from the New Deal and the Great Society, which we learned about. And he started to call the United States a welfare state. He believed too many people were getting welfare that didn't really need it. And he was against the idea that the government should have to help everybody and solve all their problems. So he was very much the opposite of somebody like FDR or LBJ. Instead, he believed that if we just let the economy alone and let people buy and sell like they want to, then it's going to grow the economy and everybody will prosper. And his idea was called unrestricted capitalism. That just means leave the government out of people's business when it comes to their money. Okay? And a big thing he's known for is cutting taxes. Now, one of the ideas that came about by Ronald Reagan was called trickle-down economics. And this referred to the idea that if you cut people's taxes and other economic benefits would be provided to businesses and upper income levels, then those people, their activity will actually benefit poor people in the society because it will improve the economy overall. So the idea is that the people at the top who have all the money, they're going to, if the government stays out of their business, they're going to spend their money. And when they spend money, it helps other people because they create businesses, they hire people for jobs, they buy things. So that prosperity or that success would trickle down to one person after another all the way to the bottom of the economy. So this was the theory. The theory was that giving people and businesses economic freedom will help create wealth for everybody. Okay? So let's do a quick recap or a quick check. Do you think Reagan's theory of trickle-down economics only helped rich people? Think about what I just explained to you, true or false. And the answer to this question is actually false because I just showed you how if the rich people are successful, that means everybody will benefit on the way down, not just the rich people. Now, a lot of people didn't agree with this theory, but it will remain to be seen as if it actually works. So here's a picture of Ronald Reagan on the cover of Time magazine. They described him as being an anti-tax, anti-union, and fiercely anti-communist. He wanted to reduce the size of the government. He wanted to cut spending on welfare programs and eliminate most government regulation on business. He wanted to take the national government out of education, and he wanted to balance the budget. He also wanted to build up the armed forces and increase military spending. All right, so what does this mean, balancing the budget? This was a big thing because remember, when Jimmy Carter was president, we said the economy was a mess, and I told you that story, how people had to wait in line for gas. Well, in 1979, when Carter was president, the national debt was the highest it had ever been. And Reagan believed that if you could cut taxes and public welfare programs and get government out of business, that it would stimulate the economy and more people would benefit. He thought that it would pay for the huge increase in military spending that he thought was necessary if we could use the money from the removal of all these other programs. So how does he balance the budget? Well, to balance your budget means the money you spend has to be equal to the money you earn, which is spending and revenue. Okay. taxes provide revenue or earnings for the government. Okay, so the idea is you don't want to spend more money than what you earn. If you spend more, you're going to have what's called a deficit. If you spend more money than what you earn, you don't have enough money to pay your bills and you're in debt. But if you spend less than you earn, you have a surplus, or you have money left over that you can do whatever you want with. And this was the plan, but unfortunately, it never worked out for Reagan. Okay, quick check. Balancing the budget means you spend more money than you earn. No, that's false. Balancing the budget means your spending and earnings are equal. All right, so Reagan's popularity. He was pretty popular. His optimism and vitality restored many citizens' confidence in themselves and their country. Whatever the problems were, he believed this nation would solve them. So while military spending went up, libraries, public radio, television, museums, national parks, and other public institutions found themselves with less government aid. Spending on education also dropped. None of this seemed to affect his popularity, though. After Vietnam and some of the bad presidents that we had before, people gained confidence in Reagan because they really believed that he could do what he said. He was extremely popular, one of the most popular presidents ever. All right. Something astonishing happened while Ronald Reagan was president. He and Mikhail Gorbachev, who you see in this picture here, he is the leader of Russia, or you could call it the Soviet Union. They began having these meetings to talk about their country's relations, and they met in a place called Geneva, Switzerland, and in Iceland. I think that's called Reykjavik, Iceland. And in 1986, their talks grew into an actual friendship. They started discussing arms control, specifically nuclear weapons. So remember, we're still in this Cold War with Russia, right? So these two guys, they start meeting and just kind of talking, and eventually they become friends, okay? Then in 1988, Reagan went to Moscow, this time just as a friend, to visit Gorbachev. Gorbachev took his guest around and took him sightseeing, and they had a good time. And all of a sudden, they realized they liked each other. So they figured out they had a chance to change history. They could end this insane arms race that's been going on and costing both nations so much money, and how it's been affecting relations with other countries all over the world. So they found some way to do it. And as you will see soon, this historical event did change. All right, I'm going to skip over that because we're almost out of time. I'm going to pause this. There's going to be 2 links that pop up to watch videos. There's going to be this video, and then there's going to be a Brain Pop video. I want you to watch both of them. And then I want you to go into your online school and do Unit 12, Lesson 5 graded assignment. Your homework for Monday is to read Chapter 61. And don't forget about your project. Work on that. It's due next Friday. Any questions, you can email me. I will be back on Monday. Okay, so wait for those 2 video links to pop up. Watch those videos. Do your graded assignment, and you are done for the day. Have a fabulous weekend, everybody.